Today I'm going to show you how to use Hypertufa to make a really nice bird bath planter for your yard. I've got the stand already made, and I'm going to show you that and show you how the stand was assembled, and then we'll move on to the actual making of the bird bath. Here's the base and the current top. I've got a little bonsai sitting on it right now. And this is something I made a while ago. It's just a piece of stone set in Hypertufa. And as you can see, I've got a ring here, a raised area, that fits down into this pipe, and I'll show you a close-up of that. Okay, here's a close-up of the tabletop that I have for this post. And here's a close-up of the raised area on the bottom that fits inside this 6-inch plastic pipe. And I formed a base for it in concrete and drilled a hole right next to the bottom so that it can drain, because water will get into this. And I put some additional holes on the other side to kind of let air flow through. And to keep this from ever tipping over, I drove a piece of rebar down into the ground when I poured the concrete base and stuck this tube in it. And I just made sure it was level on top. And the cool thing about this is any piece that you build that has this shaped insert, and I'll show you how to make that, will fit into this top and be quite stable. Alright, to make the form for the inset tab that you put on the bottom of the planter, you need a gallon planter, and check it to make sure that it's a good fit in the tube. It's a good snug fit. This one, once the form is removed, will fit very snugly right down into this. This lip catches on it right now, but the inside diameter difference will make it slip right in. I know, because I've used this particular style of gallon planter before. And you can score it about 2 inches, and then we'll cut it off in just a second. The ingredients for Hypertufa are 1 part Portland cement, type 2, is what is usually used, and 3 parts aggregate, and that aggregate can be peat moss, perlite, or sand. And you can also include, if you want it to be more structurally strong, you can include things like fiberglass or some other kind of fiber to strengthen it, but I'm not going to do that. Anytime you are working with dry Portland cement, it's very important that you wear a good quality dust mask, because the dust from cement is not good for you. I kind of like 3Ms. They make a pretty good mask, and I like the drywall sanding respirator one. It's inexpensive. You get 2 to a package, and one of them will last you a long time. Other things you're going to need are something to mix it in. Home Depots and Lowe's have these cool little $5 or $6 trays that you can mix quite a bit of cement in. I've used this before. A good heavy-duty gardening trowel, not one of those lightweight ones that bends with the slightest motion, but a good strong one is a good thing, as well as a concrete trowel, or a bricklayer's trowel. And you'll usually need some kind of form. I'm going to use this old planter as a form to build the pot over. And I'm going to decorate it with, I have some large-leafed ivy that grows in my yard, that I planted in my yard, and I've cut off a bunch of leaves, and I'm going to decorate the pot with that, and you'll see that later in the process. That isn't necessary, but it's just something I'm doing to add a little natural texture to this. Alright, here's the insert form, the form for the insert, and when we get this all assembled, we'll form Hypertufa over this mold, and then on top of the Hypertufa, we'll put this on top, and then we'll fill it up with more Hypertufa to make the insert. Alright, here we have the 4 parts to make up the Hypertufa. We have the Portland cement, 1 part, and then I have 2 parts perlite, a 1/2 part sand, and a 1/2 part peat moss. That's the way I'm mixing up this particular batch, because I want it to be fairly light, so I'm including a lot of perlite in the as part of the aggregate. Sand will give it more strength, and the peat moss will give it the Hypertufa look, which is kind of a almost natural stone look. And another thing that I didn't mention before is you're going to want to have a good pair of rubber gloves, because cement, when it's wet, it can be a bit caustic and can actually burn your skin and certainly irritate your skin. So wear gloves, because you are going to be handling this as you're mixing it up, and particularly as you're building it around the form. Okay, make sure that you're wearing a good dust mask when you're mixing this up, and just kind of pre-mix everything. Get a fairly uniform mixture of all the ingredients before you add the water. It's usually the best way to go. I mean, you can add them together wet, but I think it's a lot easier to kind of pre-mix the dry part of it and then add the water, because different parts of the aggregate will absorb water differently. Anyway, I'm going to mix this for a bit, and then we'll add some water. Alright, the dry components are all mixed up, and I suggest that you use water from a 5-gallon bucket or a container rather than the hose, because adding water with the hose, you want to add water a little bit at a time as you get close to the right consistency. Adding water from a hose, it's real easy to add too much, and then you end up with a really soupy mix that you can't really form well. So I have a nice it's a gallon milk jug with the bottom cut off at an angle. Makes a great scoop for both dry ingredients and for water. Or if you have an old measuring cup, large measuring cup, that also can work well. Alright, let's get mixing. This is what I'm talking about. It's easy to add too much water. It looks like I may have, but not to worry. No, there's enough dry stuff here to absorb it. Alright, that's too much water. I'm going to add some more cement, and I've got some extra pre-mixed aggregate I'll add to this too. Alright, so we're pretty much ready to start packing it on the form. I've got some spray, cooking spray, vegetable oil cooking spray that I'm going to kind of lightly douse the form with, just to make the Hypertufa release better. I'm using this kind of as a release agent. It doesn't work super well, but it's better than nothing by a considerable margin. I have some little pieces of pipe that you use for a drip water system that I'm going to put up for drainage holes in the planter. That's everything I need. Okay, and then we can just start packing the Hypertufa onto this. Whoops. If you want to affix the drain holes in some way, you can. Now, something you can do, and actually something I should have, well, I'll do that in a minute. You can take old broken vertical blinds and use them as a form, and I'll be wrapping that around this when I get it completely covered with Hypertufa to kind of give it a firm edge. Oops. As I think I mentioned before, this batch of Hypertufa is just a little bit on the wet side, so it's running a little bit more than I want it to, but hopefully it will hold up. There's a lot of people who use Hypertufa to cover things, and that they use as a mold or a form, but that they leave the Hypertufa on after it's dry. Now, that isn't the case here because I want to use this planter to make more of these. But if this was a disposable planter and I wanted to simplify the process of removing the planter from the final product, I could just leave the planter in, the mold, not take it out, and it would become a permanent part of the thing being made. Okay. So earlier I talked about this component being used to make the seat for the planter. And that's a relatively simple process. You just add some more of the Hypertufa. into this. Try not to get any of the Hypertufa onto the actual rim of the thing, because you've got to pull this back out. And if you dig it in too deep, it can be very hard to get it back out. And it has to come out for this to, or at least this one does, for it to fit. Now this one, I'm making this one a little on the tall side. I probably should have made the form a little bit shorter. It's about 2 inches, and 1 inch would have been more than enough. But this part I always like to smooth down real good, because this is where I'm going to put my signature mark. You saw it in the other one. This whole process is very familiar. Okay. Now I'm going to take this, put it around the outside. Pull it really snug. As you can see, this Hypertufa is a little bit too wet, and you can tell that because it's cracking, it's pulling away when I move it. So I'm just going to kind of do a little quick patching here, and then I'm going to add the leaves. Now once this is all formed and done, covered with leaves, of course the leaves is an extra step that isn't necessary. I'm just doing it because I want to add some texture to this. Then it's going to have to sit here for several days, like possibly a week, maybe longer. Even in this weather, we've had temperatures in the 80s here pretty much all week. But even in this kind of weather, Hypertufa dries very, very slowly, and you want it to be completely cured before you try and take it off the form. If you try and take it off the form before it's completely cured, you will break it. I almost guarantee it. It's relatively fragile stuff until it's completely hardened. leaves on it. Kind of work them in. You know, this leaves on this one isn't such a good idea, I'm thinking. If you're doing a flat exposed surface, putting some texture in it is probably great, but which I've done it a lot of times. But this is sagging so much because I put too much water in it that, yeah, I'm not going to bother trying to texture it. So I think what I'm going to let it do is I'm going to let it sit for a while. There's a lot of moisture in this, and the moisture will drain from the top to the bottom, and that will make it slough. And so I'm going to let it sit for a bit, and then I'll come back and firm it up a little bit, fix any cracks, patch any holes, and then I'll let it dry. But that's essentially the process of forming the bird bath. Alright, almost forgot to make the little actual bird bath. This part's the planter, and here I think I am going to actually use some leaves to form around. Oops. Hopefully that bird bath is centered well in this form. You'll be able to tell, really. Actually, I could figure it out by probing it, but I don't care if this is perfect or not. Okay, so the two most important parts are almost ready. I have to do some crack patching on this bird bath because I made the Hypertufa too wet and it's sloughing. But it's repairable, so. And if the finished result, if it gets too dry and I still have bad cracks and stuff in it, there's a product called Rockite. It's a fast drying repair cement that can be used to correct any of those kinds of boo-boos. Make it all good. Yeah, this isn't quite the same as pouring cement into a mold and letting it dry. There's a lot more hands-on when you're working with Hypertufa. It just happens to be the way I like things, but not everybody's cup of tea. Certainly this is not a production method. This is just for you hobbyists who like working with your hands and like making things for your yard rather than buying them. When this is all done, I'll have maybe $3 or $4 worth of materials in it, plus my labor, and I'll have a yard ornament that would typically sell at a nursery or a garden supply store in the $200 range. So yeah, that's kind of part of why I like doing it this way. Okay, that's enough for now. I'll futz with it more later. So I took the bird bath apart before it was completely dry, and it was a little thin in places, and it broke apart. But as you can see, the leaf pattern turned out pretty nice. Got some pretty nice vein detail, and that's what you're looking for when you're adding leaf to put texture on things. Anyway, so now we're ready to, it's been a little over a week and we're ready to disassemble the bird bath from the mold and get it ready. Alright. So I'm going to take the little plugs that I put in to create drain holes out and just kind of twist them to break them loose. At this point, this piece of Hypertufa is probably pretty solid. I mean, you could break it, and this one actually has a bit of a crack here, which I'm going to patch in a minute from the inside. That crack formed as it was drying, and it's all the way through. So just kind of go around the edges and break your mold loose. There we go. And there is the finished Hypertufa planter. The edges are a little rough, and as you can see, there's a crack that formed as it was drying. It's got that hollow sound, which is not good when you're dealing with solid objects. So, the thing we use for doing repairs is this product called Rockite. You can get it at most hardware stores. This little 1-pound thing cost me just shy of $3, and it's for doing concrete repair. It's really good for doing mortar repair, like in bricks, fireplaces, and things like that. It dries very fast. Once you get it mixed up, you got to apply it and get it smoothed out immediately, because it hardens in 15 minutes. And this is probably more caustic than any other concrete product, and it gets very hot as it's drying. And it doesn't take much to do a repair. It expands as it let's see, the water here expands as it dries, so it kind of works its way into the cracks. Anytime you're doing a concrete repair, you want to wet the concrete that you're going to apply the boy, this is so the cooking spray that I sprayed on here has kind of made this surface repel water, so I'm having a little trouble getting this crack to wet properly. Matter of fact, it's not wanting to wet at all. Alright, well, let's try scoring a little bit. Where the crack is. That one. Nope, it is not wanting to absorb any water at all. Oh well, I am not going to let that stop me. Oops. That'll stick. Maybe. Okay. That's adhering fairly well. So, see if I can get a little bit on the outside as well. That is not a good feeling, trying to scrape the crack, and I can feel the whole planter separating at the crack. So I may have to do this yet again in this whole project. Using this rockite is that matching the color and texture of the concrete that you're patching is difficult at best. If you have some aggregate left behind or some scraps left behind, you can kind of rub that in, and that will help. Dry material. it won't heal pretty well. I'm doing this without gloves. I don't necessarily recommend that, but in a smaller quantity, and I can wash my hands off immediately after using the damages to my hands. My skin is going to be minimal. So there, hopefully that will make it look halfway decent. Get that stuff off my hands. Alright. So here it is, finished. I've planted Mentha requina, Corsican mint, around the outer edge, although you can put it in anything you want. And then I just kind of scooped out the soil and pressed a shallow bowl in the center, fairly large one, for the actual bird bath, since the concrete one that I made kind of failed. And I'll move this over to where the stand is and get it put in and show you it there. Okay, here's the stand. And as you can see, it fits right in. Now all I need is just a little water. There we have a bird bath planter made out of concrete or Hypertufa.